So here is the agenda of the event. First, a presentation of the project 6G for Society from our coordinator, Monique Scalisti from Martelli Innovate. Then a little icebreaker through Mentimeter. Then we will enter into the core of the event with Lucas Pereira Carwile, who is a researcher in Cyber Social Lab, partner of the project, who will introduce the concept of controversies, the way it has been approached in our project. And then our guest, Dr. Anna Delicado, Senior Research Fellow at the Institute of Social Sciences at the University of Lisbon, who will explain the role of scientific and technological controversies in shaping public trust and policy, focusing precisely on key lessons learned in post-6G. Then another Mentimeter session, and then a place and a space to exchange ideas and feedback. So, Monique, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the introduction. Now I will share my screen, so you'll see a few slides that I will present as a way to introduce, wait a sec, here we go. You should now see my, the slides.
Yes, Monique, we see it.
Great.
We see it.
Great. So my name is Monique Scalisti, and I'm the coordinator of 6G for Society. I'm the CEO of Martel, and I'm very happy to be here with all of you. So a few words about what is 6G for Society. It's a coordination and support action that belongs to the family of smart network and services joint undertaking. We are a CSA, meaning we are in charge of several support and coordination activities across the SNS JU ecosystem, and our focus and scope is very much to look at how to support and promote the integration of societal, environmental, and economic values by design in 6G. We are doing that with 6 organizations on board from 6 different countries. Now, the vision, what do we expect it's going to happen if we do more of 6G for Society, or if we do more of societal environmental integration in technology development of 6G? We envision a future where the technologies in general, but more specifically 6G, will be widely accepted and will integrate values such as sustainability, ethical values, openness, inclusion, and that will also be by design respectful of the environment. So in practice, what we expect is that 6G, the next generation of communication networks, will enable to close the digital divide gap, to connect everyone without leaving anyone behind. And connectivity here intended also as a way to access to fundamental services. Now, how to get there? We know that a lot of the technologies are driven, technologies developments, including 6G, are driven by technologies by default, but that's exactly the key point that within this project we're trying to investigate. So first of all, pull in multidisciplinary skills and profiles, combine, trying to understand what the society needs, what the environment needs, what at economic level we need to ensure, so that there is not solely a technology push development, but it's a market, it's a society, it's an environmentally pull approach to development of technologies that need to be accepted, first of all, to have a real positive impact. And that's also why we're working on this social acceptance of technology. We are looking at key value indicators, trying to make sure that these that, first of all, there is a set of common values that are defined and understood in the same way, and that the indicators are used also consistently across technological developments. Within this set of indicators, we believe that some of them will focus more on sustainability aspects, so key sustainability indicators, but intended as a subset of KPI. We want to empower the people, the organization, the policymakers, and the regulators that are indeed working in this direction. And last but not least, we also want to make sure that we are aligned with the policy and standardization effort. Now, what does this require? It's a multi-stakeholder and multidisciplinary kind of approach that we have adopted. We cannot do that in an isolated way. Today we will reflect on specific aspects guided by Margot and Lucas, but what's the work behind that we will not discuss today? It's a lot of work with talking to citizens, trying to engage association of end users, trying to analyze from a socio-economic point of view how the development of advanced technologies went and what were the implications also on the acceptance from the society. So there's a lot of factors that are interrelated, and that's why also our work is continuing feeding back, analyzing, testing, validating, discussing, and back again. Now, just to say, the SNS JU is a very rich context in which you will find a lot of players and projects that are currently ongoing that are looking at, an evolutionary development of 5G and adoption of 5G, evolving into what's going to be the next generation network, 6G. Namely, there are quite a few projects in this context, and to work in 6G for society, we have interacted and we are still interacting on a regular basis with several of them. As you can see, there's about 35 still ongoing that might finish end of this year from the call 1, 27 from call 2 that started together with us, 6G for society, and some new ones, 16 that started now in January. And one of them, the Sustain 6G, it's a big project, it's a lighthouse project that will focus on sustainability aspects. Now, we've done several things. These slides will be made available, so there's no need now to go into the details. But what I wanted to highlight here is that we have already in this one year and a couple of months, we have been able to do a few things that we believe will be essential this year, but also in the years to come after the end of our project, to continue the work of integrating aspects that are not purely technological in the technology development. We have been doing several things, working with citizens, but also working with regulators and pre-standardization and standardization groups. So it's a pretty diverse audience that we have engaged, and several stakeholders that possibly are also here today we've been interacting with. Now, I will skip a couple of slides. You will hear much more about some of these things, but what I wanted to say is that we have a deliverable and that focuses on societal aspects in 6G technology. Is a very thick document. It's about social acceptance of technology, and we have several chapters, or let's say summaries, that we call info sheets that are being published on our channel. So please, if you're interested, stay tuned and you will be able to retrieve them. We have run citizen survey. Please, here you see the QR code in case you have time. Well, I hope you can find sometimes an answer to the survey in case you did not yet. It's about capturing expectations, fears, desiderata of end users, finally. The survey is still ongoing. We have translated in 9 languages, and there is materials also available online. There's some info materials. So in case you are organizing events or you are in touch with the community that you would like to engage, please contact us or download the materials that are available from our website. We had quite a few interesting sessions in different countries so far. There is this info package again, and the info package is translated for now in 5 languages, and it tries to provide very simple explanations and very intuitive description of what can be expected by the next communication networks. There is a video, so again, please feel free to make use of this. What's next? Well, there's a few things. Continuing to deep dive on the citizen survey data, continuing with public engagement. We want to somehow make sure that the framework that we created and presented in deliverable 1.1 starts to be adopted and used. So that's the idea. By, of course, collaborating closely with other SNS JU projects. And finally, disseminating the knowledge we gather towards expert, but also non-expert. Now we will deep dive into the main topics of today's project, but we are available to answer your questions, to provide information anytime. You see here the few channels that we are running. So thanks a lot for this opportunity, and I give the floor to our colleague Margot.
Thank you, Monique, for this introduction. Now there is our little icebreaker with Melissa, right? With Mentimeter. So Melissa, I think you can directly share your screen and direct our participants.
Yes, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. So I have just put in the chat the link to the Mentimeter. Then we have also other modalities to access it. So I'll just show you now. So if you can all click on the link that you see in the chat. If you don't, just give me a second. You should be seeing my screen now. Can you just confirm if you see it in presentation mode? See my screen?
Yeah, we see it.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, I see that you see it as well. Okay, great. For those that have access to the chat, you can click on the link that is in the chat. Otherwise, if you want to use your phone, you can point your phone to the QR code at the bottom left. So that will take you directly to the Mentimeter, or other option, but less recommended, open a tab and then type in menti.com using the code that you see at the top. If anybody has any issues, please write in the chat, but it should be pretty straightforward. So I'll move on now to the first 3 questions. We're just using this information to try to understand a little bit the crowd that we have today. So I see that it's loading. There we go. So the first question would be, what project or projects, if multiple, are you representing today? You can just type in your question. I'll give maybe 30 seconds to do so. I see only 5 responses. All the other people that are on the call are able to join so that we can get the information from everybody. Can I just check that everybody is able to log into the Mentimeter? I see some answers coming slowly. When you say SNS JU, please also be specific so we know specifically if it's a project that you're representing.
The SNS JU, the joint undertaking.
The officer, yeah, great. I see 2, so I know Chiara, one was you, and then the other one I was not sure who from the other side. And if you didn't manage to get into the Mentimeter, also please feel free to use the chat if you want to do so, to share which projects you're representing. Give maybe another couple of seconds and then I'll move on to the next slide. Perfect. So then the next question is, what is your background or field of expertise? Perfect. And then the very last question, and again, if you would like to add your information, you can also use the chat if you didn't get to the Mentimeter. And the last question for the moment will be, what is your interest in joining this specific webinar?
We should play some music in between.
Yeah, maybe we should have.
Next time organize music.
Yeah, some lounge music, bossa nova.
Vai.
Okay, so Margot, if you're happy, we're at 2:30. There's still a couple more.
Yes, yes, thank you for your time, for your patience.
Note if you can keep your tabs or phones open to the link, because we will come back with a couple of more questions a little bit later. So that
More on the presentation. You know, it's important this for us as SSH expert, because nothing can be taken for granted in multidisciplinary environments. We speak very different languages, so it's important for us to know you a bit better. But now we enter really the core of our event, and so I wanted to share with you our next speaker is our researcher. It doesn't share. No, there was a problem. There was a problem in sharing, but my PowerPoint closed, but no worries, because I open it immediately. And Lucas. Now, Lucas is our researcher from Cyber Social Lab. Lucas is a researcher that has contributed more directly to our activities in matter of acceptance and in framing also the approach to acceptance, starting from the topic of controversies. His speech will be a bit of an introduction to this concept, but also to the work that SIS-G for Society has done in this regard. Yeah. So, Lucas, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Margot. Thank you, Monique. Thank you, Melissa. Could you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you see it? Okay. When technology sparks debate, navigating 5G to shape a value-driven 6G. So what I would like to do with you guys today is to engage in, and I hope so, a fruitful conversation. So don't hesitate also when we're talking in the Q&A to participate and discuss with us. So what is understood by social acceptance of technology? Social acceptance of technology is usually understood as a process by which individuals and communities and institutions come to understand and engage with and ultimately support, reject, or tolerate a new technology. It is a social technical process that involves not only the technical attributes of the technology, but also the social, the cultural, and institutional context in which it's introduced. And in our webinar today, we focused on controversies because we think it is a necessary first step. That is, based on discussions that were previously held within our project, I heard many times our coordinator and our project officer and others asking this question: what went wrong with 5G, if anything, right? And here it comes to mind the arson attacks. It comes to mind opposition at the community level against the rollout of the antennas. It happens also at some people that argue that it underperformed, it didn't sell as it should. So we are talking about different levels of acceptance. We are talking about a social political when we're talking about municipalities opposing 5G. And we're looking at market not willing to buy because they don't see the reason why. And from our perspective, the one that we emphasize the most, the public aspect of this, the controversies, which were people in small cities in Italy. Just to give you an idea, more than 400 small cities in Italy, they post questions about the antennas. And what comes to mind when I was engaging with this community, because I'm from Brazil and I came to be up to speed recently. I had last year to learn about these things. So I came to understand that people were not only conspiracy theorists, as many people argue, but that they were really concerned about things like property values, about the impact on their health. And then I went into a search of the field of discussions and finding the different stakeholders and how they felt about the social acceptance aspects of the technological innovation. So what I want to aim to say here is that technological innovation, particularly in the ICT field, is not free from its fair share of controversies and tensions.
Lucas, we can't see the slides.
Also, okay. Can you see it now?
Okay. I wanted to make sure that
Yeah. Thank you, Margot. But these agreements I was saying, they do not simply arise from a misunderstanding, but from genuine differences in values, interests, and perspectives of what constitutes progress. So we found out that people were posing certain questions that had to do more with the governance aspect of this. So we also had conspiracy theories, but what we found out is that they were not the dominant discussions being had. So my point is, what can we learn from the 5G experience to shape a socially accepted 6G future? And this is why we organized this webinar. For us, is that understanding the pain points of the technological development where people do not agree should help us align with social values to perform what we said we would do. And we said with 5G that we would provide a ubiquitous, hyper-fast wireless ecosystem. And for many people, that didn't happen. And what happened instead, we saw that delayed rollouts, we saw citizen protests. We can think of Lyon in France and how mayors from green parties and socialists, they opposed it. Jean-Luc Mélenchon and wrote a manifesto asking not for the against the technology per se, but for the delayed rollout, because what for them was important was that society could discuss this technology. And many people felt all over Europe, it seems, from what we learned from our research, is that they felt they were not heard. So our question was, will 6G repeat the same mistakes? And here, again, I think we need to try to understand, because if it's too abstract, we can think of other technologies, but we have to understand that controversies are not a byproduct of ignorance or necessarily people don't know. It has to do more with the way people perceive reality. So in our understanding, controversies that are different from conspiracies, they could tell us more about risk perceptions, highlight trust deficits, because many times people would argue that they did not agree with the governments, especially the higher levels, the higher ups, and the corporations. And they also expose communication failures from the side of the technology and innovation players. So our understanding here is that controversies are where technology meets democracy, and that we should try to attempt to bring together these dissenting voices and to build a public forum where we can sort it out, the different claims that were made. So what were the main controversies had over 5G, right? And I think many of you here already know that. So health and safety came often and had to do with EMF radiation, scientific disputes, and a precautionary principle. And here I would like to pinpoint a relevant fact, which was the welcome to the 5G appeal that was prepared in 2017 by scientists and doctors who urgently called for the EU to halt the roll. So we're talking about 2017, was way before the wave of arson attacks in 2020. And this was brought because they felt that 5G could possibly pose potential health effects from this new technology. If you follow the discussion, you will see that this is not consensual. Many people say that this is an exaggerated claim and that we shouldn't fear about the EMF from the 5G in these devices. But this was something that came up a lot, and was something that also these movements in small cities, they claimed. We could not pursue an independent research of the controversies, and I feel like we should do it. There's very little in terms of qualitative ethnographic work done to understand how people actually feel about it, the reasons if they know about the appeal or not. But this was a very hot topic, the health and safety one, a very contested one. So you have to keep that in mind. In the second one that came about had to do with the antennas, the way they felt threatened by its presence. They felt that was aesthetically displeasing. And also many people mentioned the e-waste as another factor. I think Sustain is trying to also address that, Sustain 6G project, and biodiversity concerns. And also, I apologize because I haven't included here, I take it for granted, the energy efficiency of these technologies. Another topic that came up with 5G, and then we have to think if this is possible and plausible that it will happen with 6G, is the issue of privacy and surveillance. A lot of people mention that these technologies will enable surveillance capabilities never seen, and that we should be careful about them. So data collection, digital rights are also something that we should pay attention to. And another topic which came about is a digital divide, where people were talking about being left out of the benefits of these technological advancements. And last but not least, I think a lot of people heard about it because we have countries saying they would ban the companies, the Chinese companies that run 5G from participating in Europe and elsewhere, mainly spearheaded by the US. And we had issues of sovereignty and global trust, where now it's key, and in our deliverable, we even mentioned that Europe is trying to find its own way between what the US is doing and what Europe is doing. So this is an overview of what we found, and we think it's relevant for the community to tackle, to discuss, and to make something out of it, to try to understand what this tells us, what kinds of values are at stake here. So, and I'm closing. So when we're going to have more time, I hope, to discuss after Anna's presentation. But controversy should not be taken should be taken seriously, and they're not supposed to be dismissed just as a problem of ignorance or misunderstanding. This dismissal can increase polarization, and I would like to plead with you guys that if you dismiss people as ignorant, they tend to stick to their opinions and stop listening to the other side. And this is not only happening with technological development, this is particularly strong in Western countries, but we should also think about politics, how politics became polarized, and technology is being captured by that polarization as well. And 5G also was part of that, if you think about it. So this increased polarization is going to erode trust in institutions, which is something that is ongoing, and complicates the communication and even the act of communicating, because people might not be willing to listen to a discredited source, and they might dispute the expertise of the people talking. So controversies may reflect legitimate dissent within the scientific community and between competing expert knowledges, and we need to be, at least in our understanding, honest about it and make the most of these opportunities to provide the knowledge that is necessary to go forward. So my point here is that controversies can tell us more on how society engages with technology innovation in a realistic way, that is not swiping under the rug what is unpleasant and what might seem ridiculous, because even the most unfounded fears, like the relationship between COVID and the vaccines, well, and 5G, right? That was one of the conspiracy theories, and also the market for grifters, people that were selling memory sticks for people saying that they would provide a safety from 5G. So we have to understand that, but also look at what doctors and engineers are saying, those that have a different vision of these technological innovation aspects, because this is where the richness of living in a democratic system which is highly developed and scientifically advanced is. So controversies may highlight diverse aspirations, priorities, concerns, and visions for the future, and also values across different local contexts and social groups, like Margot previously mentioned. Sometimes even between us, experts from different realms, from STEM and from social science, we have a hard time working together, understanding what we mean. So the same happens here. We want to invite the citizenry to participate, to engage with us in a respectful and productive manner. So this is what I wanted to say today. We have done a lot of work on the D1.1, and we're really open and willing to have people from other projects and from the community in general to engage with us. And I hope, honestly, that this is something that it's going to work for us to get started. We need to engage and start discussing without being afraid of being wrong, but being open to what the other person is saying, instead of being dismissive and critical without giving the other person a chance to express herself fully. So I would like to give the floor to Margot again, and so we can hear our expert, Ana Delicado, who was super gentle to be here. Thank you, Ana. Thank you also the crew for organizing this, and we'll get back to the questions and answers after Ana. Okay, I hope that I didn't confuse you as much, but I'm here to clarify as well.
Thank you, Lucas. So, as I told you before, now the floor to our guest. Thank you, Anna, for being here. Anna, as I said before, works as Senior Research Fellow at the Institute of Social Sciences at the University of Lisbon, and will tell us a bit more about the role of scientific and technological controversies in the processes of shaping and creation of trust, and also in policy processes. Thank you, Anna, again, and you can share your screen, and the floor is yours.
Hello, good morning. Thank you for having me. First of all, I have to clarify, I'm not an expert on 6G, not even on 5G, but for the past 20-something years, I've been working a lot about scientific and technological controversies. Not exclusively. I also do other work on social studies of science and technology, but the issue of controversies keeps getting in my path. I'm currently studying the social acceptance of quite different technology, which is carbon capture and storage. So what I bring you today is not an in-depth approach about 6G, because that is the work that this project is conducting, but rather an overview of how technological controversies or socio-technological controversies emerge, and what causes them, and what different factors and aspects play a role in these controversies. And so it's probably a very broad spectrum approach, but it is based, as I said, in several years of work about these issues. So I will share my screen. And I will cease to see you. So if you want to interrupt, you have to make some noise. So this is the topic I was proposed to address, and it got me thinking about a lot of the work that I've done in the past 2 decades about issues of science and technology, and how the public interacts with science and technology. And so this is a topic that is quite dear to me, because as a social scientist, I think we have an important role to play, and this 6G project is an example of that. I think that we can no longer consider that technology is for the engineers and for the scientists, and everyone else just has to take a back seat and just accept things as they are. I think that in the European Commission, the way it funds research projects nowadays seems to be quite clear about it, and quite has a high awareness of the importance of the social dimension, and that we cannot force or cannot impose technologies upon people. We need to work with people, work with the public, work with civil society organizations to get the technologies into the market, into implementation, but also in a way that is respectful with the needs and the concerns of the citizens. The thing with technological controversies is that they are nothing new. We all know the story of the Luddites in the 18th century England, but also the way that railroads were received in the 19th century. And here, the way the stories are often told as people had irrational fears of these new technologies that were coming into their homes, or into their factories, or into the countryside. But what these stories tell us is that the people were quite right in fearing what the technology brought to them. In the case of the Luddites, they were not protesting technology in itself. They were not protesting against the spinning jenny. They were protesting about what that meant for their working conditions, for their wages, for their employment. And so they were, in fact, affected. Of course, it was not a question of health risks, although there were some, of course, but it was rather a question of how technology has the power to change society and the livelihoods, and in some cases cause real problems that are of a social, not necessarily of a health and environment nature, but also of a social nature. And that's what these ancient stories tell us. The problem is, as new technologies emerge, so do controversies. And I think that the past, 70 years or so, since the Second World War, we have seen a technological development that is so fast, so overwhelming at times, that interferes, that imposes into all aspects of social life. And so it's natural that society has a hard time in adapting. And sometimes I think, when we read about all these new technologies that are emerging, AI, robotics, genetic manipulation, I think the common people, the citizens, feel overwhelmed by this technology. It's such a barrage of new things that force them to change, to adapt, to accept, to live with these technologies. So I think it's natural that these controversies emerge. And some people do think that even though scientific controversies are played out mostly in the realm of science itself, between academics, between different scientific disciplines, within professionals of the same discipline. Social technical controversies for me are far more interesting because they spill out of the scientific field and come into the real society. And these social technical controversies mobilize a wide array of agents that have quite different, sometimes competing interests. You have the government, you have the regulators, you have local authorities that sometimes are at crossroads with the government because they feel that the impact in their vicinity will be far more felt. We have companies who have a vested interest in pushing these technologies or getting these technologies adopted. We have civil society organizations that try to represent the interests of citizens, consumers, residents, but also we have environmental NGOs that are mostly concerned with the impact of these technologies over, not just on the human side, but also on the environment, on the more than human or non-human aspects of our planet. And we have also common people, citizens, consumers, residents who get concerned and involved in these socio-technical controversies. So unless we live in a technocratic regime where scientists and engineers and government decide which technologies are implemented or which are not, we do have to get into a conversation with all these social actors to address this social technical controversy. First and foremost, we have to admit that these controversies emerge because technological risks do exist. And I have yet to see any kind of technology, even the ones that seem more consensual, that does not have any kind of risk associated. And we do have a lot of studies that show that these risks can be environmental, can be on the health and safety of populations, but also they can be over the social aspects of current life. For instance, there are all these discussions about robots and AI will increase unemployment and inequality. This is a technological risk. It's not just what the technology does in itself. It's also the social consequences of technology that concern people. And this is a reasonable concern. First and foremost, because history shows that technological risks have not always been well managed. And I managed to find all these examples that I've been following over the past decades. And from the thalidomide babies to mad cow disease to all the episodes of environmental contamination provoked by, for instance, chemical industry, the issue of tobacco, the issue of asbestos, all these were technological innovations that caused serious problems. And citizens have watched as these risks have not been well managed. Sometimes it's because there is insufficient testing. Sometimes it's because evidence about the risks are hidden. Sometimes it's because where there's uncertainty, instead of opting for a precautionary principle, government and decision makers try to go ahead and masking this uncertainty. In the case, for instance, of tobacco, but also climate change, there's a long history of even researchers paid by companies fabricating results showing that either tobacco is harmless or that climate change does not exist or is not a concern. But also, people have watched as governments have failed to act in the case of these risks. There's lack of regulation, and often profit is put over people. So people have a reason to distrust science and technology. Of course, this is quite different, and that's something that I've always appreciated and I draw attention to. This varies a lot across countries and varies a lot with how informed people are and how educated people are. And contrary to public opinion, more information, more knowledge, more education does not translate into more trust in science and technology. It's quite the opposite. Several studies have shown that this is a sort of a curve. People trust science and technology a lot when they are lowly educated and also when they are highly educated. The problem is in the middle. The ones that have some access to information, some skills to interpret information, but also the opportunity to reach information that might not be true. And this is particularly concerning at this time. But the fact is that all these stories of how technology has been mismanaged show that people should not trust blindly in science and technology. At least that is my view. Also, some technologies raise a lot more fear than others. And probably the best example of the most stigmatized, the most feared technology is nuclear. Because we have military applications, we have the issue of what to do with radioactive waste, we have the issue of accidents and contamination, we have the issue of discussing whether this is a good or a bad energy option. But nuclear is definitely one of the most maligned technologies. And this is quite influent over how people perceive this technology and everything they associate with. And unfortunately for 5G and 6G, they share one thing in common with nuclear. Yes, you will tell me, yeah, ionizing and non-ionizing radiation is quite different. Yes, but not in public perception. In public perception, radiation is radiation. And so this stigma that is associated with nuclear technology transfers to mostly everything that has radiation associated with it. Be it power lines, be it even solar panels, cell phone masts, even the X-rays on airports. All these raise fears in citizens, which are easily explained. And the classic authors on the sociology of risk always give the nuclear as an example because it's the utmost risk in contemporary societies. It's invisible to human senses. You cannot smell it, you cannot see it. It poses significant health risks. It is associated with highly stigmatized disease as well, which is cancer. It can cause death. It has long-term effects that can be felt by succeeding generations. So not just you, but your children, your grandchildren. And also that's probably one of the key factors. This is a risk that is imposed. It's not voluntary. These power lines, cell phone masts are installed without people having a say on that. Because when we consider that radiation is also present on microwaves, on Wi-Fi, on cell phones, on IoT objects and everything, and yet people accept it and bring these objects into their homes. And I don't think anyone knows that, anyone fails to know that these objects do emit also radiation. Probably completely mild and inoffensive radiation, but still radiation. But these objects are far more accepted. And why? Well, because people feel the benefits of having Wi-Fi, cell phones, microwaves at home. And this brings me to another topic that I think it's important when we look at controversies. Controversies often emerge when people feel that distributive justice is not being met. When the distribution of benefits and risks is not balanced, it's not democratic, it's not. And for instance, in the case of cell phone masks, we all know that the inhabitants of buildings where these phone masks are installed received a moderate income from them, but all the buildings that surround them, where people will also be affected, presumably by the radiation, they don't reap those benefits. They suffer the risk, but don't get the benefits. And when there's this perception of injustice, that's where controversies tend to emerge. Another kind of factor that weighs in on the emergence of controversies is the issue of procedural justice, which is a different type of justice that concerns who gets to decide whether technologies are implemented in their vicinity or not, who is consulted, who decides. And when people feel that something is being imposed on them, that there's no dialogue, that there's no consultation, that there's no discussion, there's no information, people tend to feel that that technology is far more threatening than something that is debated and addressed and people have a say on. And we all know that risks are unequally distributed in society. Nobody is going to build a nuclear power station in the vicinity of a rich neighborhood, or a wind farm, or any sort of technology that may pose any sort of risk. So this perception that there's an injustice in who gets to be heard on the decision making is also a factor that affects strongly controversies. Another topic, and this is far from exclusive, this is just the ones I remember that could be fit into a 15-minute presentation. In these technology controversies, there's often the issue of NIMBY, not in my backyard. Proponents of a development, a project, a new technology, judge the rejection of residents, in this case, by the feeling that they would accept the technology in general, but not just in their backyard, in that neighborhood. But social scientists in the past few years have strongly come to reject this sort of interpretation. NIMBY is not a real phenomenon, but rather an accusation that is launched into people by the promoters, by the people who have an interest in having a project developed. Far more interesting for us social scientists is to examine the concept of place attachment and seeing that people tend to like the place they live, have strong emotional feelings towards them, with the landscape, with the way it is perceived, with the naturalness of it. And so it's reasonable to expect that people that feel a strong place attachment will tend to reject the imposition of technology that would in some way hinder the place where they live and that they like. Finally, just 2 more slides. Can socio-technical controversies influence policy? And here my answer would be sometimes, but not very often. At least from my observations of several different technologies, it's not the public rejection that determines whether a technology or a project or a development goes ahead or not. There has to be other factors, usually economic. Although you can say that in the 1970s, some countries, for instance, in Europe, completely rejected nuclear technology. For instance, Austria is one of them. My own country, Portugal, is another one. And you can say that the public pressure against the technology was fairly influential about the political decision. The Austrians have in their constitution that they are a non-nuclear country. So a strong political statement as that, I have never seen. But the thing is, it's not usually just that. There has to be a combination of factors. It's not just petitions, boycotts, or demonstrations that stop a technology from being adopted and stop the policymakers into. What the controversy does is, and sometimes, and I think that's a very positive thing, to get to a midterm, to improve the decision-making, the policy decision-making. Because if different parts are heard, then their interests and their concerns might be contemplated in the policy. So I don't think controversies should be avoided and can be avoided. I don't think that, considering all the factors I've just said in the past 15 minutes, that controversies can be completely avoided. What they can be is addressed, mitigated, and that can only be done when we respect the parts that are engaged in the controversy. That we don't reduce public opinion to irrationality, emotions, lack of knowledge, conspiracy theories. No, people fear technology, and sometimes for a very good cause. And these fears can be mobilized and can be addressed and can be solved and can improve science and technology in itself. And so this is what I had to say today.
Thank you, Anna. Great presentation.
Yes, thank you very much. So I hope that so in a few minutes we will be able, we see a lot of nice reactions, very good. So now, before opening the floor for the key question and answers, we will have another Mentimeter moment with Melissa. In fact, it will be an icebreaker to open the debate, because we will have a few questions for you. Melissa.
Thanks, Margot. So I have put again the link to the Mentimeter if you had closed your tab earlier, if we have new people who joined. So you should have access to it now. So I'm just going to skip to the warm-up questions for the discussion. Can you see my screen, first of all? Probably not. And now you should.
Mm-hmm.
Something is coming up.
Not yet?
Not yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Okay, so the first question is, do you think the public should have a say on the implementation of technologies? So maybe we brainstorm a couple of minutes. You can drop your answers in the Mentimeter. And also, if you have questions that you would like to directly ask the speaker, we can also do so. We will have a Q&A, interactive Q&A at the end. So I'll give the audience a few minutes to reply.
We could also ask them if they want, they're willing to open the mic, right?
Yeah, of course, please go ahead.
We can have an open mic session.
I think it would also be interesting to understand who says yes and who says no, or who has mixed feelings, because we have a diverse group in the crowd. So I saw earlier on few sociologists and then tech representatives. So I think also that will give us an idea of the responses. Okay, so I see we have 11 responses. If you want to put in the very last ones, and then I'll move to the next question. Okay, and then the second question is, I see some people have already responded. What makes you think that 6G might be controversial, if you think so? So I see here we have already some answers for some reason. That's very good. So if there is anybody else who wants to add to that. Yeah, and we can have maybe a few minutes to do so. And then Margot, I can pass the floor back to you when you're ready.
We had already asked this question. That's why there are answers, Melissa. You had put it already on before.
Did I?
Yes,
Oh.
I answered to this question.
Okay, because I thought we did only the intro questions at the beginning. Okay, I hadn't seen this appearing on the slides.
Experience of power. Nice. So, Melissa, how many questions do we have in this Mentimeter session?
10 answers.
No, how many, questions?
That's it. That's it. Then after the other two questions, Lucas will bring them into the Q&A.
Okay, great. Yes, because I saw you discussing. Let's see. Sufficient information. I
can leave this page open if people would like still to provide the responses, because I see that the responses are coming in still. So I'll leave this floor open for people to chip in, but I'll leave you back the floor so you can have your interactive Q&A.
I think so. I think we can. I like the answer philosophy. This would be nice to be better explored. But Lucas, I would leave the floor to you now, because I know that you have other questions and you would like to open the floor.
Yeah, and also to see if it can work some magic here. I need the participation of the people watching us right now, because we have Anna here, and it would be a waste to let her go without engaging with what she said and what we're trying to say here. And feel free to add some comments. So the first question I would like to pose to the audience, especially for those directly engaged with 6G projects, 5G projects, is why do you think controversies emerge? This is the first one. I will write it down also on the chat. And please raise your hand and you you can open your mic and you can talk. Also your camera if you feel better at doing like that. And the second one is, what do you think should be done to mitigate the controversy? So I'll write it here in the chat, and please engage.
Yeah. Or also you can make questions to Anna.
Yeah, somebody already raised his or her hand.
Okay. So I think then we can give the floor to whoever wants to participate. Raki, right? You can talk? Or was a mistake? No.
Can you hear me?
Sorry, I have a question and I put it in the chat.
Yeah, I just read it, Monique, but I just heard the voice of our participant. Could you speak louder, please?
Yes. Is it better now? Can
Yeah.
you hear me better? Okay. Yes. Sorry, I think I had some problems unmuting my microphone. So yes, I think my suggestion or my view of it is that, when there's not information out there, then there's room, there's some sort of, let's say, vacuum, which allows different kinds of misinformation and conspiracy theories to get in. So my approach or my suggestion would be that, if, of course, as as some speaker mentioned earlier, that there are different, in terms of technological literacy, there are different, levels of technological literacy among the population. So maybe information about the upcoming technology needs to be disseminated in public in a way that is easy for people to identify, and maybe show them how it's useful, how it will be useful, and how they can it improve their quality of life. But most importantly, facts have to be put out which can counter misinformation and that sort of thing. That's my opinion. That's all.
Thank you for that. Anna, would you like to comment and also answer what Monique just said? She wrote here, clearly to address social technical controversies, there is no easy recipe, no one solution fits all. What do you think are the most important aspects that recur in most cases? Are there some recurrences?
Again, I think it has to. Sorry, I think again it has to do with which user group we're talking about. Which how if you're talking about, let's say, a particular group of people or a particular area, geographical area, then I suppose it.
Sorry, the question was for Anna.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
sorry,
don't worry.
My mistake. Sorry, I'll mute my microphone now. My apologies.
No, don't worry.
Yes, you could answer as well. First, to Praki, I think that it's true that there are different literacy levels and technological literacy levels, and no project will be able to manage that, because it's something it's from the background of the people, and you can't communicate the same way you do with your colleagues than with someone who left school at 10 years old. But what I've seen and watched is that scientists do have trouble communicating in clear terms. But there's a whole discipline called science communication who has tried to bridge that difficulty, but I think that it fails sometimes to reach the scientists themselves. So I give you the example that last week I did some focus groups about carbon capture and technology, another technology that is very complex. And my colleagues from the scientific side did a frequently asked questions document. And the comment from the public was, citizens I consulted in the focus group, was, this is full of words I don't understand. And that is true because they did not test it before sending it to us to be used. Communication materials need to be tested to make sure that people understand them. And that is something that we sometimes just jump into the next phase. So that is an issue. Also, there's a lot of ways. Websites are all very well and social media and so on, but there's a resource that scientists very seldom use, which is Wikipedia, which is somewhere a lot of people draw their information from. But scientists usually don't bother updating Wikipedia pages about their area of research with sound information that people can confront with other fake and conspiracy theories and so on. So the effort must be put on us, the scientists, to reach the people. About Monique's question, what I tried to bring here today was the common aspects in a lot of controversies. The type of thing that gets people worried about technology. And I think that we have cases where the scientists and engineers address the controversy, and the policymakers address the controversy very well. And so it mitigates the impacts of these controversies, and others where they mishandle it completely. And one of the things is just not to provide information to people that this technology is harmless and very beneficial. It is also creating opportunities for people to express to you what this technology means to them and how does it concern you. Only then you can, because technologies are different, but also the public is very different. What worries a lot, for instance, in Portugal, which my country, there was no 5G controversy. Nobody complained about the cell phone masts, and there was no reaction to the technology at all. First of all, because it was not discussed. There was no public discussion about 5G, the introduction of 5G. It just was played out in government levels, in expert levels, and it never reached the population, but people did not feel affected by it. Whereas in other countries, like in Belgium, it was a disaster. So the publics are very different, not just within, in the sense that we have environmental activists, we have technology enthusiasts, we have a lot of different people in what we consider the public, but also because different technologies raise different concerns, but also the way the public reacts to these concerns is very difficult. We had a lot of anti-nuclear, and we still do have a strong anti-nuclear movement in Portugal, but we have very little in terms of opposition to wind farms, and now it's emerging. So it's very different. Also, as I said, the issue of science literacy and education is quite important. We have a lot of trust in scientists in my country, and that is something that is shown by Eurobarometer studies, whereas in other countries, the levels of trust in scientists is very low. Here, if a scientist appears on television and says, this is harmless, people trust him and believe him. In other countries, probably people wouldn't. So it's very difficult, and it's not one size fits all, unfortunately. So there's no magical recipe.
Would you just like to give the floor to Vincent Lefebvre? He said he would like to ask a question. You could talk, brother.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Lucas. So my question is probably off topic and not directly related to 6G or 5G, but more generally to the use of communication that we are making. At the very beginning, Margot, our presentation stated that 6G design is going to be sustainable. So basically, we are putting pressure to make sure that we are, let's say, spending less energy to transmit, etc. Very good. But this is absolutely peanuts in terms of efficiency compared to the education of the people. And what I'm concerned is about how much bandwidth we are consuming for bullshit, typically streaming. If you look at our kids, their consumption is absolutely crazy. Typically, they will be for listening a song, they will have a video. So typically, respectively of the bandwidth that it burns. So I was just thinking, can't we have some kind of public policy in order to somehow get a kind of pay for use, which would educate the people? I'm not asking for higher pricing. At the end of the day, the pricing should be equal, but it will just give to the people, educate the people in such a way that kids, before transmitting any kind of TikTok or whatever that just received 5 seconds before to the planet, to the whole planet, burning carbon everywhere, would think about, I will pay more, or my father or my mother invoice will be higher. Even though, it's just a question of education, because at the end of the day, 6G full bandwidth will be burned by streaming, absolutely not by IoT. IoT is absolutely peanuts. If you look to what IoT consume, is absolutely ridiculous compared to the streaming. So in 6G, we will still burn 99% by streaming, by our addiction. So that's just what I wanted to say. Can't we have some kind, but it's probably and certainly not the place and the right place to discuss that. But I'm just considering, when you have your energy invoice, you are paying according to consumption. Why can't we have this kind of very basic rule for communication, which would educate everyone and divide by 10, the need of bandwidth, just educating people. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Vincent. Now I'll pass the floor to Chiara, who's our PO, and then we could have comments from Margot or Anna. Okay.
I just wanted to react to this point. I think it's an important one. It's probably out of scope of the conversation of today, but it's an important one on sustainability. By the way, we have some smart network and services joint undertaking projects, Exigence, but many others, Sustain CG and others, that do work also on the the services, the impact of ICT services on consumption, so on the energy consumption and on the carbon footprint. So I think we are going in the right direction, but it's probably true that when you have a label that tells you that you are consuming this much and you are over consuming to watch a cat video or whatever streaming, it's an awareness raising factor. Now, I think what you touch upon and what can be related to the workshop of today, it's the education. In terms of consumers, educations, in terms of society, education to the use of the technologies. But I think we should not disguise this into putting responsibility just on the end users, because otherwise there will be another controversy that, okay, we have so many technologies, they are so pervasive, immersive, and then it's up on me to consume less the services that I'm paying for. And I think ultimately there's an issue on business models. Until when we would not make sustainability a business model per se, which can work alongside economic sustainability and other business models that we do know, we will not make it. When we will find the right incentives for the users, for the technology providers, for the network operators to work towards a shared goal, which is the goal of having more sustainable infrastructure, I think it would be win-win-win. So just very high level, but I think it's, and it can spur further controversies indeed, because the world is finite, the resources are finite, we are in a geopolitical context which is tense, extraction of rare earth and other materials are becoming more and more complex. So I think we have to consider these planetary boundaries and these geopolitical considerations, which are becoming stronger in the policy makings of today.
Thank you very much, Chiara. Very good.
So
Can I
thank
say
you.
something?
Yeah, please, Anna.
Regarding Vincent and Chiara's comments, that is something that concerns me a lot, the environmental side of that, and I've been quite interested on the costs, environmental costs of AI lately. But the issue of pricing is complicated because what it introduces is a social divide where the rich can do whatever they want because they have the money to spend, and the poor will be penalized and excluded from this thing, like uploading videos to TikTok. Nobody hates more than me the videos that children upload to TikTok. But the fact is that pricing works in benefit of those that don't have money concerns and further isolates and stigmatizes those who do have that. So I would say that in terms of environmental costs of these technologies, I would far prefer to have a regulatory approach, and have curbs into what the companies can do into making their products addictive, which is the case of social networks and like TikTok. We should address the systemic causes of these horrible environmental impacts and not penalize individual users. And the issue of education is also quite tricky because it's difficult to, and that's something that I also teach about sustainability and practice theory, and it's quite impossible to change practices through education. It has to change the infrastructures, it has to change the values, it has to change the personal capacity of doing things other way. So education is a poor instrument to lead people into more sustainable practices. So it's very tricky, it's very complicated, but I think we definitely should address the systemic causes of this.
Mhm. Okay, thank you.
Now, I think we're getting closer to the end, so I would like to know if other people feel like contributing and asking questions. Margot, if you would like to also say a couple words about what are the next steps and what we should do in terms of Chiara, go
Maybe
for it.
A quick one, since the conversation were very interesting, and thanks for organizing this. I think it was inspirational. And what I do take out is that it's difficult, of course, to have a broad overview of the Lambda citizen and what they think and how they refer to new technologies. But I think what would be interesting also from a 6G for Society perspective would be to understand better how do people perceive what exists already, which is 5G, and what is next, which is 6G. So I think we should find a way of representing this in a more concrete way through the different engagements tools that you have. Because as Anna said, it depends very much, of course, on many different factors, but I think the kind of, putting this into a matrix can help understanding also. And my takeaway is that controversies will not be avoided. These are a natural part of democracies and of expression of feelings, sentiments, fears, but also that we should try to nail down really what the benefits could be. And I think the great takeaway for me is that, of course, the technical parts, the engineers will keep working on defining the use cases, but maybe those use cases can be better enriched if we find a way to have a matrix that represents people in a fair way and so on and so forth, but that can be enriched with the real benefits that are perceived from the society.
Chiara, just a heads up, we're going to accept this kind of way to answer to what you're saying, right? Because this is exactly what acceptance is supposed to try to solve. Bring in more stakeholders and try to enrich just what you said. But anyway, Margot, would you like to say a couple of words?
Yeah, just a closing and an explanation about our next steps. Let's see here. Yes, so as I said, we plan to organize other 2 workshops. Titles are tentative, but basically we will skip from the issue of controversies into that of acceptance, trying to understand the process and the aspects that should be taken care of when speaking about acceptance in a bit broader way. And taking into account trust and societal values. Also wanted to tell you that some of the aspects that we dealt with today have been addressed in our deliverable. So the introduction of Lucas, for example, you can find that there in a chapter in the deliverable. Don't be scared, it's a bit long, but now we are working to making it a bit more digested and digestible, dividing it into different products. And also, we leave you our emails in case you want to continue discussing these topics in the next months. 6G for Society will end at the end of this year in December. And in the remaining 8 months, we want to engage with projects in the SNS community. We have already started some conversation to better know how they're working on acceptance and how their work on acceptance could be improved in case. So they tell me that I didn't share my screen very good. So sorry for that. I thought I was sharing my screen, but there's not so much. So there was only this slide. I really thank Anna for this very insightful contribution. Well, I hope, yeah, I have already some questions that may be useful for other work. I hope that we will be in touch again. It's very interesting. So here are our contacts. Thank you for being here with us and for your questions that were very interesting. And please do not hesitate in getting in touch with me or with Lucas, because we can try to address some issues separately in the context of your projects. Okay, so if I hope it was you enjoyed it, and yeah, nice.
Yeah, but just to wrap it up and let people go to lunch. Stay tuned. We're gonna have 2 other webinars in store, like Margot said, and we have also interviews with experts. We're probably gonna have a one-on-one with Anna later on. We'll see when she's available, and we're gonna be doing these kinds of activities. And don't hesitate to get in touch. I just left our website page, so please check it out. Follow us on LinkedIn, and that's it. Thank you very much for everybody that was involved in the organization, Margot, Anna, everybody who attended, and that's it. I hope you enjoyed it, and we did what we could.
Yes,
Lunch.
Bye-bye.